What's up, y'all? You're watching Brooklyn Shuffleboard, and you're about to learn some shuffleboard strategy and watch a singles league playoff match between Pat and George. These are two longtime league players who have a really fun playing style, and I'm expecting a super exciting match. Joining me for commentary is Pat's teammate, Katie. And together, we're going to walk you through everything going on the court, give you a ton of really great tips for levering up your shuffleboard game. It's going to be a blast. Subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks so much for watching. All right, we are about to kick this thing off. Frame 1 of 16. A quick note on format. This match is a single 16-frame game. After these warm-up shots, the players will play 8 frames on the color they're on now. Then they will switch color, take more practice shots, and play another 8 frames on the opposite color. Whoever is ahead at the end of the 16th frame game moves on to the next round of the playoffs. And then, speaking of playoffs, as mentioned, this is the first round of our spring 2024 singles season. We had like 110 players in the singles league, just an amazing turnout. People of all skill levels, people playing for 10 years like myself, people who are brand new, just joining to get better and get the experience. And the top 48 of those 110 move off into a single elimination bracket. So this is the first round of the playoffs. Whoever wins this moves on to the next round. And yeah, as mentioned, I'm joined by Katie over here.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you. I've been wanting to get you on the channel for a while, so this is like a lot of fun. I'm really excited. So yeah, you are Pat's teammate on Tangers Only. Is that correct?
It is correct, yes.
So, and you also play against Pat a lot when you guys are like practicing and stuff like that, right?
We do, because we both play from the head for our teams. So.
Yeah. Awesome. So as someone who has played against Pat, can you talk a little bit about what makes him such a tough player to play against?
Well, Pat's just a consistent player overall, but he's also not afraid to take risks. So I always call his signature move the surprise pepperoni.
Ooh, I like that.
Because you turn around for 1 second and then you look back at the board and suddenly there's just biscuits littered all across it and 3 of them are scoring and you don't know how any of them got there.
I love it. I mentioned that a little bit in the intro of like both these players have a really fun playing style. They're not necessarily like clear the board every single time and score the hammer. They're going to make some really interesting decisions that I think that's going to make for a really exciting match.
Yeah, I think so too.
And then in terms of the singles season results, I was checking my notes. Pat was the 3 seed with a 10-2 record, and George was the 6 seed with a 7-5 record. However, with Pat doing better in the regular season, George, I find, comes in here all the time and practices, like way more than Pat. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's definitely accurate, yeah.
And I know he's been gearing up for the first ever Brooklyn National Shuffleboard Tournament this weekend. And I'm wondering if that like hitting the gym every single day kind of thing, getting those reps in, is going to benefit him a little bit. Yeah.
I could also see, I know that the courts have just been waxed, so they're also going to be a little bit, they're a little bit slow. The speed's a little bit off, so I don't know if the fact that George has been practicing a lot and now the court is a different speed might actually work against him rather than for him.
That is really interesting. You're totally right. I was here yesterday, and they were like so slow, and I had no idea why. And then as I was leaving, Nick, the manager, shout out Nick Shields, was like, "Oh, pretty slow, huh?" And I found out that they had waxed them. And counterintuitively, when you wax the courts, they actually get slower for a couple days. I don't know exactly why. I don't know if it has to do with like the residual wax that they put on the discs gets transferred to the court, so when they re-wax, it kind of resets. Or if it just needs more time to dry and cure. Any theories on that?
My guess would be that the wax on the courts doesn't get buffed. So basically we are, by using the courts, buffing that wax down, because they buff the wax on the discs before they give them to us. But that 100%. I don't think that buffing happens on the courts. I think they just wax them.
I think you're spot on, and I think your prediction in the intro came true as Pat puts up a St. Pete and it doesn't make the lag line. So I think the slow speed is probably going to throw both these players off. It also makes me a little worried for the national tournament coming up. All right, so Pat didn't make the lag line. George, even with the hammer, some people throw off just trying to keep the board clear for the hammer. Instead, George puts up a St. Pete, and Pat tries to block that hiding lane. But George is going for it.
Oh.
And you can see that disc kind of curve to the right a little bit and clip the yellow. So that's kind of what I was saying before of like not really unorthodox, but just like really fun play styles where both players are going to like take any hide opportunity they have, really go out of their way to create hide opportunities as well.
Yeah.
So George here looks like he's thinking about what to do.
Yeah. Got to be thinking about using that as a Tampa, especially because there's some drift on the court towards black.
Ooh. Yeah, really nice shot from George. Just went a little bit too deep and ended on the 8-7 line. And any disc on a line does not count as scoring for the people who are just sort of joining us without having played before. And Pat does a good job of blocking it up. You know, George, if Pat didn't put that disc there, George would have been able to knock that disc on the line into a 7 and get an 8 and a 7 for a 15-point hammer. So just like that, George has a pretty blocked up board for a hammer. I mean, he does have a lane on the left. And it looks like he got it. Yeah,
nice.
Really nice hammer from George. I really like how he learned from his mistake from earlier in the frame, where he was trying to kind of like hide down the camera left side of the board, but it curled to our right and clipped that yellow block. And he was able to adjust on the second one and aim more to the left. And that's something that's like really, really hard to do. This is one of the 2 driftiest courts we have, 8 and 9. And you definitely need to, like, when you're playing on a court that has a lot of drift, create an aiming point, not where you want the disc to go, but like a foot and a half to the left of where you want the disc to go, and just trust that the drift will like help that disc curl or curve into the scoring area where you want it to go.
And you do have to really pay attention to where you aimed for the first time if you miss, so that you know where to, like, how far over you have to shoot from that point.
Yeah,
if you don't know the point, then you can't adjust.
Absolutely. It's like create an aiming point, see where your disc ends up, measure that distance between the two, and then kind of keep in mind that is the amount of drift. So if you're aiming at the number 8 and it ends up on the center line, you know that it curled to the right by about 12 inches, maybe 14 inches. All right, so that, I didn't see if that's on the line or not. I think it's probably just clearing it anyway. Yeah, he goes for the clear and misses it to the left, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Is that in? Yeah, it is. Is in? Yes, is in. Shout out August with the clarify. Oh, well, now we know because George just went to block it. Oh, he went to bump it. All right, it's definitely in now. But the problem with that is those 2 discs are too close together, where Pat's just going to blast it and hopefully clear both with his shot. Shoots it, hits it hard, but it does not clear both of them because he hit it kind of straight on. So this is a tough one for George. You know you want to block it up, but you can't block too far to the right or Pat can bump his own in. And you can't block too far to the left or else he can get it down the middle. That looks pretty solid. I mean, I think if Pat wants it, he could rail it down the left and hit his own into the 10, but that's like not necessarily a high percentage shot. It's kind of hard to see how open it is. I think that's what he's going for, though. All right, he lines it up, shoots it hard, and barely gets it. Really nice shot. Definitely risked leaving. He wanted to hit it, I think, a little bit more flush straight on to make George's disc shoot out the back, because that could have resulted in George staying in points. But he kind of salvages the hammer, and after 2 frames, it is 0 yellow, 8 black.
No. Still worked, though. Still works.
Still worked, yeah. Got her done. So thinking about, I know you said you just played on this court recently. I played on this court last night. Why don't you tell the people at home about the drift on this court? Because you can definitely see on some of the shots it is curling to the right, but some of the other ones, like Pat's first whiff, didn't curl to the right at all. Yeah. So what do you remember about this court drift?
There's definitely a lot of drift towards black, but it's worse on the black half of the board.
Yeah.
So on the yellow half of the board, it's not as pronounced. And also the center line is a little unreliable, so there's a little kind of sliver where it'll go back towards yellow, especially on like the yellow side of the center line.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my read of it too. Like some of these courts, like 8 and 9, you think, oh, the whole court drifts towards the columns, but there are these like random patches that drift opposite the columns. And it's like the most frustrating thing in the world when you're like relying on it to drift toward the column and then it doesn't. Ooh, so we got 2 sevens there. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see sort of how that drift impacts players, especially the person playing black. Because if the drift is more pronounced on black, they're shooting through that every time, where yellow's kind of shooting around it. And it really creates an advantage for yellow as a result. So we'll kind of see if Pat's able to get a little bit of a lead in the front half, and if that's the result here.
And easier to use that drift to get behind blocks too, because it's working in your favor.
If you're playing yellow,
for both blocks.
100%. Yeah, so we got a yellow and a black in the 7. Pat decides to try to like score an 8 in front of it. And I think he overshoots a little bit, ends on the center line. So George looks like he's just trying to put points on 2, but it goes a little bit too far to our right. So I have a feeling Pat's going to like try to hit this black disc head on and hope that he doesn't kind of cross his finger and hope it doesn't hit the 7. Oh, he shoots a little soft. Yeah, he just goes for like maybe an 8, I think.
I think that was going for an 8 and just went a little long.
And if he got it, that it would have been hidden, meaning that black disc up front would have been in the way for George to clear it out if he had scored that 8. But just like the prior one, goes a little bit long, ends up on the line. And now George, I think he's probably just going to try to really block up that left side.
Especially now that Pat has...
Yeah, really nice shot from George. Blocks up the left side and leaves an 8 that looks like it might be a high 8. I can't tell from here if there's enough space between that 10-8 line and the black. But either way, Pat's probably just going to try to rail right at it. Nice shot.
I think that there's enough space.
Oh, and he rolls it over.
I was going to say, I think that there's enough space if you roll.
Yeah, absolutely. And that drift that we talked about makes that roll a little bit easier. You just kind of hit it straight on, and it carries to the left. And really nice frame from Pat. Had a couple of opportunities to really pile on the points and got, unfortunately, hit the 7-8 line and the center line. But yeah, he converts a really hard hammer. And after 3 frames, it's 15 yellow, 15 black. All right, so it's tied up, but George has an extra hammer here because we're going into the 4th frame. So George still has a little bit of an advantage, but pretty much just a coin flip of a game. Yeah. And Pat is starting out with a really nice St. Pete, perhaps a teeny bit deeper than you want. Typically, you want to get the between the tip of the 10 and the edge of the board.
And the drift took it a little bit further towards black than I think he intended.
Oh, and George tries to kitchen it, and I think it ends up on the 7-10 line. Yeah,
it is on the on the 7 kitchen line.
He's going down to look at it. I recommend everyone, if you're new to the singles league, if you're even a little bit unsure, go look at it because it's like the worst feeling in the world to finish a frame, think something's on the line, and have it not be. So definitely shout out to Pat for checking the disc.
Always check, but my pro tip for the yellow disc is you can see the reflection of the black line on the side of the yellow disc, and that can help you figure out if it's on the line or not.
Ah, I like that. And then Pat switches up from a St. Pete to a Tampa, and that's a really nice Tampa. It's just to the left, just to the camera right of the tip of the 10. Yeah.
And keeps George from trying to kitchen that disc that's on the back kitchen line.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of doubles duty. George tries the kitchen again. Speed looked pretty good, but he clips it too far to the left. And this is definitely something that you don't see a lot of players doing, trying to kitchen St. Pete's and Tampas. If you can get it consistently, it gives you such an advantage. But the problem is if you don't get the kitchen, you just sort of leave your disc in its place if you hit it straight on, and you give your opponent a hide opportunity.
Yeah.
So let's see if he tries to go for it.
And it's even less usual to do it on your own hammer. Usually when you see that, it's people who are off hammer and kind of are just making things interesting.
Yeah, it's something I do all the time in like fun games. You know, like games where you're just like hanging out with some friends playing shuffleboard. It's so much fun to try to kitchen a Tampa, roll it to the left, and make it a St. Pete of your own. Yeah. That move is actually called the Dr. Bob, from named after Bob Jones Jr. from Ohio. I saw him do that in the National Doubles Tournament in St. Pete 2 Januaries ago. And then I told someone else about it, and they're like, yeah, that is, I thought I made it up. And he's like, no, that's definitely the Dr. Bob. So apparently it's been a thing for so long that people across several states know it as the Dr. Bob.
It's got to feel good to have a shuffleboard move named after you.
That is like that should be an aspiration. One thing I've been doing. That's on the line. All right, so we'll focus on the game here. Hammer from George, big time shot to take the lead going into the 5th frame. Spending some time lining it up.
Especially since he's been trying to kitchen things
Gets the
all
10.
frame.
Really nice shot with the 10. Gets the 10 and takes a 10-point lead after 4. Is that something you do if your opponent's not in the 10 but they're on like the back line of the 10? Do you use that and try to hit it straight on to kind of like get that 10-point, or do you just take the open court 8 on either side of it?
I think especially with a drifty court like this one, if I'm concerned that I might tap them in by accident if I try to go for an 8, then I'm just using them as a backstop and trying to get the 10.
Interesting. See, on a drifty court, I probably tend to go for it less because I'm worried. I feel like a drifty court makes it harder to get the 10. Even though we just talked about how the center line might not have that much drift. I typically, unless the score sort of like getting that 10 gives me an advantage because I'm down, let's say I'm down 9 or something like that, and an 8 leaves me down 1 versus the 10 puts me up 1. Other than that, I'm pretty much always going for the open 8. I personally just feel like it's an easier shot, but I have a bunch of people in the league who like say I'm crazy. All right, so this was a big mistake from George. It didn't even look like he was kitchening. He tried to clear it hard, and he just leaves it there. So Pat's trying to put an 8 on the right side of the board, pretty much on that printed 8, and it'll be perfectly hidden. Looks pretty good.
It's going to be a little over.
Yeah, really nice. Just missed the 8 up front. I feel like that looks like a pretty nasty high, but George is lining up down the alley.
It's visible but annoying.
Oh, and George does not get it.
With that drift.
Yeah, so that I would call that a mistake. I guess using the mistake is a little harsh, but for that one, George went for the 8, which I don't have a problem with because he had a line on it. But I think knowing that you're on like the driftiest side of the court, the softer you shoot it, the more the drift impacts the disc. I would have tried to maybe hit that a little bit stronger to try to make the drift impact it a little less.
Yeah.
And instead he either went to like go for an 8 or maybe kitchen it. Oh, and then Pat blows it by trying to hide again and clipping the block. Oh, you hate to see it.
Yeah.
Man, whenever I do that, that is like one of the things that frustrates me the most in shuffleboard whenever I do that. Because now George has a wide open lane at it.
Yeah.
Let's see. He might be going kitchen speed. He's spending some time lining it up. Looks like kitchen speed, and he comes up way soft. Does bump it on the 8-7 line, though. So good result. I mean, maybe he was trying to do that. Maybe, but my guess is he was going for kitchen speed and came up short. You can only guess what is going on in the minds of these players. But it leaves Pat with like kind of a weird one. You know, what would you do here? Blast it or try to finesse it?
I honestly might try to finesse it over.
Tries to finesse it and does not get either. Only gets the 1, right?
Yeah.
1, yeah, just the 1 black.
Yeah, I might have actually tried to have been on to us, the left side of the biscuit, so kind of in front of my own, next to his, make it hard to clear out without hitting his own.
That's probably what I would have done too in like a fun game, but just knowing how much drift there is and like neither of these players seem to have a great command of the speed. If I'm feeling like I'm not 100% on, I would maybe, although you don't want to blast it because it's like not your hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably go for that too.
Snuggle, you know, it's like.
Oh, it's a lot of fun for
to
sure.
do. And a nice thing about the singles games is that no one else is, you know, at the mercy of your own choices.
Yeah, no one's
You're the
impacted.
only one who has to deal with them. So I'm
100%.
kind of happy to go a little bit riskier in a singles match where if I lose, I'm the only one who loses.
Yeah.
There's not 3 other teammates who are going to be bummed out about it.
Is that something you think about, letting your teammates down? Is that like going through your head or not necessarily?
Not a lot, but I definitely feel like I make more consistent choices in our team matches, and I let myself make some more chaotic choices in singles. And then when I have to make chaotic choices in league games, I've practiced.
I love it. Yeah, practice the chaos. I think that's spot on. I mean, also like a 16-frame game, you get a little bit more time to really hone the craft. If you think about like our league matches, they're 8-frame games, and you're only playing half those frames because it's doubles. So you basically get 4 frames. So maybe a little bit harder to play aggressive and have finesse. And that was an interesting one. Pat looked like he tried to hide behind it, but it ended up on the center line. So that's like kind of what you were saying, where the court predominantly curves to the right, but there are these lines, these areas in the center that curve opposite away from the columns.
Yeah, can't trust the center line.
And that is also a great example of learning from your mistake the first time and adjusting. He clears the black. I definitely see a pat down the alley for him, right?
It's visible, but again, annoying with the drift.
Let's see if he learns from his mistake the prior time and shoots a little bit harder. Come on, George, you got this. Does not shoot a little bit harder, and it curves way right, and ends up on the 8-7 line. That's rough. Yeah, even if that went harder and it was in a 7, it wouldn't necessarily been hidden. So Pat, I think he's probably going to try to hide again, but he knows he just clipped the block, so it's like, what do you do here?
And I think that he also knows that if George goes for a little like tap on the side, he could end up with 2 scoring ones and potentially knock him out. So
yeah, that's a great point. He definitely like read your mind there and thought, let me try to block that combo. But in doing so, the drift kind of pulled it right, and George still has a lane if he shoots it hard and straight at getting that 7 out. Really tough shot, though, from George. Doesn't shoot it hard enough, and it curls right. Oh, but he lucks out with a skill shot. Nice job, George, with the skill shot. It takes a lot of finesse to be able to clip a blocker on the side and roll into a 10. All right, Pat with the hammy. And that's a high 10, too. This is a really hard one.
It's like not what he was going for, but it worked out really well.
It seemed exactly what he was going for. I just think we're not in his head. All right, hard hammer from Pat. He has to try to clip the edge of that black one and get it out of there. And he gets it really nicely, yeah. A lot of people would have maybe even thought about, you know, just leaving that 10 and going down the left side, because there's definitely multiple scenarios where if Pat clears that 10 out, he leaves George in points. He might even hit that other disc.
Yeah, he could have split.
Could have split George's 8. That's something when you're trying to think about shot selection. This is something I read in the Larry Farris book. Larry Farris, like one of the Hall of Fame all-time great Ohio players, is every time you're trying to choose a shot, you should think about all of the possible choices you have, and then all the ways the frame can play out as a result of each one of those choices. So like Pat going for that 10, you in your mind as a player, you want to think about, well, if I mess this up, what are all the ways I can mess it up? And if I get it right, what is the result of that? And then think about your options. Well, what if I go shoot an 8 down the left? What are all the ways I can mess it up? What are my benefit if I get it right? And basically try to like balance that and calculate that risk reward based on how good or how bad the shot is and your percent likelihood of getting it. It's kind of like this constant like mental calculation, almost like chess, of like all the ways the frame can play out. But the difference with chess is you don't actually know if what you're going for is what you're going to do. Still got to execute. All right, so Pat's hammer here, and you see him going on the board and gives it a little bit too much mustard.
You hate to see it. Hate to see a self-kitchen.
Hate to see it. He's going for a little walk out by the scoreboard, the team leaderboard back there, trying to clear that out of his head. Yeah, George is trying to block it up. And that looks like definitely not a great block.
Yeah. He's got eyes on that biscuit.
Yeah.
But clearing a kitchen is tough, especially on a drifty court.
And he clips the block. He called it. Yeah, that's really hard. One thing I like to do when I'm trying to block up someone in the kitchen is I'll look at the board from my opponent's side. It looks like George is not going for it, just given that he messed it up the last time. He looks like he's maybe trying to take that high cross court.
Yeah.
And he gets the 8, not hidden though, but he gets the 8.
Yeah.
And now Pat with a tough choice.
Yeah.
Do I try to clear myself out, or do I go for the 8, clear and replace?
And because of that block up top, it's also hard for him to get the double and try to get
yeah, goes for the 8.
Top one into his own kitchen.
Yeah, to kind of clip it on the diagonal and clear the kitchen out using the black. Yeah, so he goes for the open 8, kind of open 8, doesn't get it kind of because of the drift, and ends up with -10 that frame. So after 7, it is 12 yellow and 33 black. Man, that's so rough. I get what he's thinking, though. Like, you're down 11, and you want to play the kitchen game, so you throw kitchen bait. One tip that I've heard, which is sort of like a pro-level tip, is when you are playing kitchen bait, don't aim for the deep 7 initially with your first shot. Try to maybe aim for like a deep 8 or just even an 8, thinking that if you overshoot, you'll end up with a 7. And then if your opponent clears it, then the next one, you're more likely to get that deep 7. I've seen so many people kitchen themselves.
As a chronic self-kitchener, that's what I've started to do, is to like aim a little bit higher and then let myself like kind of make the accident deep 7 by aiming for the deep 8.
Exactly. Find the groove there. And George decides to clear, which I think is definitely the right strategy up 21. That's a mistake a lot of players who are maybe newer intermediate don't really know to make, is like once you have a lead, you definitely want to protect the lead by trying to keep as few discs on the board as possible. Unfortunately, he stuck that one, and now we have a really exciting kitchen opportunity for Pat on the drifty side of the court. Looks pretty good.
Oh, he got the drift right, though.
Yeah, gets the drift right, reads that well, keeps his in the 8, but does not get the kitchen. Yeah. So now George, with the hammer, probably trying to clear again.
It was a close kitchen, though, so...
Ooh.
Yeah, with another opportunity, we'll see if he gets it right this time, because he wasn't so much further than the kitchen that first time.
Oh, definitely. Really close shot in the same spot for attempt number 2. Looks pretty good. And he does not get it either.
Further.
Misses both of them. So now George with an open court hammer to really expand this lead going into the color change, where he'll have the advantage in the second half with yellow. And he shoots across court. Looks pretty good. And nails it. Really nice hammer from George. Gets the 8. And it is 12 yellow, 41 to black. George with a monster lead after 8. And we are going to take a short break. We'll be back with you in 1 moment. And we are back. These are practice shots before frame 9 George on yellow, Pat on black. And, Pat's taking his first of 4 warm-up shots at the head of the court. Really trying to think about what is the drift of the discs, or what is the drift of the court, and how quick the discs are. When you are down 20-something like Pat is right now, does your strategy for warm-up shots change at all, or do you kind of have the same routine for your 4 discs no matter what the score is?
I usually do the same old thing. My go-to is shooting my first 2 discs from the 1 position, 1 to each side of the court, and then I'll use the second 2 shooting from the 4 position to each side of the court.
Yeah. So in doing that, you're really trying to figure out when you're shooting from the 1 position as close to the center of the court as possible, like what is the line you need to take to consistently get an 8 on your hammer, is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then from the 4, you're trying to figure out where do I need to aim to hide successfully behind like Tampa's and St. Pete's, or you're
Mostly just trying to get on the board and just like get a feel for it. I try to not overthink it as someone who is likely to overthink things. It's nice practice and kind of just letting my body get used to it.
Yeah.
And
so food for thought for practice shots. I have heard other players, especially, or I guess particularly, Paul Assad, arguably the second best player in Brooklyn, say that when he's down a bunch of points which, I mean, honestly, this is probably made up because how often is Paul down a bunch of points? But what he says is that when he switches color, he will try to shoot an 8 or a 7 and try to kitchen it.
Yeah.
Thinking that the way that you're clawing back from this lead is by kitchening discs. And if you use 2 of your warm-up shots to practice that kitchen speed and sort of like understanding the drift a little bit for like a disc in the 8 or a disc in the 7, you are more likely to get that kitchen when you go for it. It's something that I also don't particularly do. I really try to stick to my like game plan for my 4 warm-up shots, which are similar-ish to yours. I like to shoot a little bit more from the outside from the 4 spot.
Yeah.
But I also do like to use one of my warm-up shots for driving a 10, clearing and replacing a 10. But I do very much see the reasoning behind trying to like shoot a disc, kitchen it. And I think the next time I'm down, like in a game, I might even test it out to see how well it works. Because it just makes so much sense.
I do think that it's good to remember that we are halfway through, and if things went this far wrong for Pat in the first half, they could go that much right for him in the second half. We don't know. So like it's already happened once in 8 frames.
Oh, 100%. And also you've been seeing that, like the way, like I just said, there you go. The way that Pat gets back in this is by kitchening George. And we've seen George really struggle with clearing. That one he didn't even try to clear. I think he was looking like he was maybe trying to shoot an 8 on the left and snuggle it. But yeah, I think this is definitely still anyone's game, despite the kitchen, scoreboard.
But again, we've got a little, the start of a pepperoni,
if
you will.
Oh yeah, pepperoni Pat, or Pat pepperoni. We're not going to see a pepperoni. George with a clear into place on the 8, leaves himself with an 8 here, and I think Pat is definitely thinking kitchen on that 8. All right, he shoots it. Looks pretty good. Ooh! Gets 2 8s. Were we in key? Were we in harmony there?
I think we were,
It seemed like harmony. Gets 2 8s, comes up a little bit short on the kitchen.
So close to the kitchen, though. So close.
So this is going to be like an interesting one for George. If I was him, I would just blast one of them and hopes it ricochets over and clears the other out.
Yeah.
That's maybe what he goes for.
Oh,
all right. So yeah, this is like exactly how you get back in it if you're Pat.
Yeah.
Just one score at a time. You already have the 8. Get another 8, 16-point frame, and you cut this deficit down significantly. And that curls a little bit to the right, and it's short.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That is rough.
But one score is better than none. So
yeah, I mean, he definitely
still got his hammer.
Scored on his hammer frame. And after 9, it looks to be 41-20. Is that right? We got to talk about chalk pressure a little bit.
It's 41-20.
41-20. Let's talk about chalk pressure really quickly. If you are a newer player, or actually, this is a PSA for all Royal Palms League players. If you are writing the scoreboard, please apply as much pressure against the chalkboard with the piece of chalk as you possibly can. It's not going to break. It's thick railroad chalk. Everyone wants to know the score of the game. It's really much less fun to watch shuffleboard if you don't know what the score is.
So you can also take an alternate and write it and then go over it. So you can just go over it a couple of times if like going with
I've been
too hard
playing
pressure
for 10
is
years,
hard.
and I never once thought to outline it a second time. That is incredible insight.
It's the artist's perspective
Yes,
that you were
the
missing.
artist's perspective. I love it. All right, so George getting keeping the aggressive play, going for the kitchen, and leaves Pat in again. So this is like another one of those frames. Pat has to decide, though, without the hammer, do you block up, cover your treasure? He does not. He goes for the kitchen and doesn't get the kitchen, but really nice shot from Pat, rolling that over an 8. Kind of a risky shot where he almost knocked his out. But yeah, that was a tough one where, like, for me, I mean, I guess he is down 20-something, but I would be tempted to cover the 7, given that clearing that center line 7 out and scoring is such a hard shot. And if you miss it, George can go down the alley and clear the 7 out. I don't know, but he gets it.
For a frame to be making that decision, this is a really good one to try that, because this is the first, other than the practice shots, this is the first frame that they've played on this end of the court, on these sides of the court.
Yeah.
So if we're maybe hoping that George doesn't necessarily know what all of the drift is.
Oh, wow.
That was a beautiful shot.
Really nice. I think he was going for that too, because you saw him walk down over there.
Yeah. He thought about it a minute.
Crazy.
Yeah, that was a good shot.
Man, that is like a spirit breaker if you're Pat. And he misses the kitchen. Speed looked good.
And almost got the roll.
Hit it to the left also, you know? Like, that's what we're talking about, with that weird path where it drifts away from the columns.
Sometimes the courts are just a little haunted.
Yeah, they're always, court
just
6
got
especially.
A little ghost.
All right, hammer shot for George. And he gets it. Really nice 8 from George.
Beautiful
going
hammer.
up 49-20 after 9 frames. And if you're Pat now, I mean, Pat's been playing aggressive ever since the color change. Like, you need to be converting on some of these kitchen tries. You know what I mean? Like, he's had enough tries at it now. He's probably honing in on the speed. I think if George gives him another opportunity this frame, I would not be surprised if Pat gets it. Yeah. 49-20, man. That's a lot. 29. I mean, still a lot of time left.
Yeah. Not impossible. Certainly not impossible.
I don't mind. Honestly, if there's 6 frames left like this, I guess I'm getting a little nervous being down 29, but like, it's a fun position to play in, because you get to really try to like come up with, just try different things and see what works to try to claw back in this. Yeah. Nice shot from Pat.
That was a nice 7.
Half, maybe, 1/4 hidden behind that yellow disc up front. Really hard to hide with the drift. But with the drift, this is going to be a hard one for George to get. His disc is probably going to curve to the right a little bit. Yeah. Oh, he's going for the combo.
Ooh.
Man, this is
Ends
what
up
I'm
with
saying.
A snuggle.
Wild shot. All right, so Pat, really nice execution though. Like, would not have gone for that, but excellent execution. 2 shots, 2 frames in a row. I would not have gone for that, but a really nice execution. My guess is he's trying to knock the black into the yellow. No?
I think he was just going for another on the board.
On the board, yeah. Try to play the kitchen game, leave discs close together where like some magical things might happen.
Yeah, especially because if he had gone for that combo, if he was a little bit off, he also could have ended up with himself in the kitchen.
That is true, yeah. Playing around really deep on the board. Man, George, I mean, you know me. I'm up 29. I'm trying to blast everything if I'm George, but looks like he goes for a snuggle, and it comes up short. Yeah, this court, this is going to be, I really hope it speeds up between now and the national tournament on Saturday.
Me too.
I don't like when I'll play on slow courts, but I don't love it. Yeah. My like sweet spot, I think, is the Chicago courts. Also the Lansing shuffle courts in Michigan that I just played at. Those courts are like really, really nice. And a nice block from Pat. Okay. Just trying to keep trying to hold that 8-point advantage he has there. Hope that George misses the hammer with the drift pulling everything to our right. Yeah. So yeah, if George misses this, Pat cuts it to 21. Yeah. All right, he's lining it up. Looks pretty good. Maybe a little soft. No, looks good.
No,
right in the 8.
On.
Yeah, I can't. Right on the printed number 8.
Right,
I can't judge these at all. What's soft and what's hard.
15 points for everyone. For everyone, 15 points.
Yes, 15 points for all. You get 15 points. You get 15 points. Unfortunately for Pat, though, he doesn't cut into the lead there. Yeah. But he does have.
It's 64-35.
Yeah. That looks like the score. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chalk pressure. They're doing it all right. Actually,
well,
I think Pat's doing a good job with chalk pressure. The problem is with Pat's handwriting right now.
Everyone needs to get used to the
Be
really
better
nice drafting handwriting.
Writing neatly.
Everyone practice your block numbers.
All right, going down the alley. And I thought he had that. Really close.
If it hadn't have ricocheted off of the block, I think
it would
have
been perfect.
It.
Curl to the left again. And George with a block, but I don't know. Pat can maybe go down between those. He has the line at it. Man, he really needs this. Get this disc hidden in there. Oh, and he curls left again.
And now that's a Tampa for George again.
Yeah, Tampa for George, but I don't even know if you're going for it. I mean, I probably just continue to block up.
Yeah.
Yeah, put a disc right between those two yellows. Try to block it up. Yeah, nice. I mean, no, it's nice-ish. I mean, Pat with the hammer, maybe even tries to kitchen that Tampa.
I was like, I would probably be kitchening the Tampa.
Yeah, he goes deep 7 on the left. Playing kitchen bait. George has a line to clear it. Let's see if he leaves himself exposed, though. And he doesn't score. They're going to check that.
I
don't think either's
out.
in. They got to look at it, though. Yeah, I'm telling you, any disc, you got to go down and look at it. All right, you didn't get either. So Pat with a hammer probably going on the left side just because that line on the right gave him so much trouble. And he shoots it. Oh, he goes down the right. Oh, and kitchens it. Let's go. Gets it, baby. I didn't even see that line.
Beautiful hammer.
How did I miss that read? Really nice shot from Pat. He absolutely needed that. And he gets the kitchen and the score and cuts that lead down by 17 points. Man, I called it. I called it 2 frames late. I was like, Pat's due for a kitchen, and then it took 2 extra frames.
He got there.
So now it's kind of like almost anyone's game again.
54-42.
Yeah, 54-42. George still with a pretty good lead, a score and a half.
Yeah.
You know, when we say a score and a half lead, if you hear someone say that, it basically means that like a score is 7, 8, or 10. So if someone's up by more than 10, they're up by more than 1 scoring disc. So George in this case up 12, up a score and a half. If I'm him, I'm just clearing everything. But yeah, it goes on the board again.
A little short.
And I can't tell if that's in. They're going to come look at it. If I were to guess from my position, I think that's in. But yeah, that's in.
All right.
Pat's thinking about looking at it. Or maybe he's just looking at the angle. I think if you're Pat, you got to kitchen that to our right and just leave yourself on the 8-7 line, sort of like covering your own disc, providing a little bit of protection there.
For sure.
So let's see if he can get this kitchen. He just made it last frame. Come on, baby. Looks pretty good, maybe? Does not get it, but I think that 8's in.
I think that's in.
No one's looking at it. It must be obviously in from their side. So 2 7's in, and George shoots it pretty good.
Not going at the speed that I would have imagined.
Yeah, he hasn't been doing it hard. He hasn't been shooting hard at all. But puts Pat still in a hard position here because Pat can't really clear that yellow one out without messing his own disc up.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if he's trying to kitch that yellow 7 on the center line.
I think that's
and
what
he
he's going. Oh, no.
Whiffs it, knocks the 7 into points, and leaves himself in the kitchen. Definitely, Drift got the best of that one.
That's one of those shots that I feel like if you were to try it, it would be really hard to get.
Yeah,
but
right.
It only seems to ever come up if it's like not what you want and it's the worst thing that you could do.
It is. I 100% agree with that. Sometimes when I'm doing like speed shuffle practice, I'll try to glance discs like that, not necessarily to kitchen myself, and it is really, really hard. Add in the kitchen.
Yeah.
All right, so now like George, last shot before Pat's hammer, you're trying to think of, do I block his ability to clear himself out of the kitchen? Do I block one of my discs, probably that 7 that's close to the center line, so Pat can't kitchen it? Or do I just put a score on because this frame has clearly gone my direction?
Yeah. I think that an 8 on top of that 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's the more important one to block because Pat could twofer that center yellow into his own to get it out of the kitchen and maybe end up with George in the kitchen.
I mean, he has a line. He still has a line to do that, but it's like a really sharp angle. And with the drift moving towards the columns, it's really hard to get.
It's rough.
And if he does it, no matter if he gets himself out of the kitchen, he's going to knock his own 7 out. Like we're talking about hitting the left side of that yellow disc that's in the center and trying to clear your kitchen out using it. And he goes for it, and curls to the right. He gets the 7 though. That's probably the best outcome he could have had, like a 14-point swing. Got rid of the 7 and scored his own 7. So for that frame though, he's still gains down. It's 7 yellow, 4 black. So he lost 3 points when he needs to be making up points. But sort of like definitely recovered from what was a catastrophic sort of scenario in the middle of that frame. Yeah, so we have 3 frames left, and he's down 61 to 46. So that is 15 points. George has 1 extra hammer, so George definitely in the driver's seat here. But with George not really clearing, this is still very doable. Yeah. All you need is like a kitchen here, and it becomes a 1-score game again. Yeah. He goes for the clear and gets the clear. Nice.
Gets it.
That's what the right shot, definitely. Yeah. At this point, blast clears.
They've also both made mistakes. Pat has just made worse ones.
Yeah.
So it's 15 points is not impossible at this point.
Yeah.
Because all George needs is to make a couple of mistakes like that, and if Pat kitchens that, then it's like we're right back in.
100%. Yeah. The trouble with the clearing has created a lot of kitchen opportunities, which means that comebacks are very possible. And that looks pretty good. And he gets it. Great. Gets 2.
Nice
8
kitchen shot.
And the kitchen. Really nice shot from Pat. And George lining this up pretty quickly. Shoots it hard. Trying to clear himself out using the 8. And doesn't get it. Rolls himself into a 7. And now we have a kitchen attempt number 2 for Pat. So he's not going to be able to score on this. So he really needs to make sure that he gets this in the kitchen. Too hard.
Well, he might be able to get a roll. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, too hard for the kitchen, and leaves George the opportunity to clear himself out. But on our really slow Royal Palms courts, it is not easy to clear yourself out of the kitchen. You need both power and finesse in terms of like the contact point on that disc that's in the kitchen.
So what would you do here?
I would rub my bicep for comedic effect, and then I would blast this as hard as I possibly can. Yeah, I would probably try to hit on the left side also. I clear the kitchen out and try to make contact on the left side, knowing that if my disc moves 90 degrees to the left, I'm more likely to hit that sideline, where if my disc moves 90 degrees to the right, it stays more space to stay in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would 100% clear myself out. I mean, you could make an argument for making an open 8, obviously, but I've been really practicing my clears lately. I'm trying to clear this out. Probably the right shot, honestly, is make an 8. Is that what you were getting at? Is that what you would do?
A little bit, yeah.
Let's go. No!
Because even though that was a high kitchen, with it being so slow and considering that George has been sort of throwing a little bit lighter in general.
Yeah. You're probably right.
Tough.
You're 100% right. I think the higher percent shot is scoring a hammer. This is exactly what I was trying to say before. Is like, when you're choosing a shot, what are the possible outcomes? Yeah. You know what I mean? You get 10 points, more points than scoring an 8 by clearing yourself out of the kitchen, but it's probably a harder shot to do than scoring an 8, which is worth less points but a higher likelihood of getting it.
Yeah. And the chaos shot that you would go with in practice would have been trying to stick your own on the black disc and knocking that into the kitchen, possibly into your own.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a fun disc. Although any sort of fun game that I have when I'm hanging out here, as soon as there's like 4 frames left, I'm like, oh shit, I gotta win this.
Your competitive nature gets
the
the best
I can.
of you.
I mess around, and then like eventually a switch flips where I'm like, oh yeah, I still like winning.
Oh.
All right, well, I mean, like we said, it's anyone's game, just even with that 10 point. George is still up 5 with 2 frames left. He just leaves Pat in points there. So now Pat doesn't have to necessarily kitchen this, as Myron channeling his inner rodeo banquet vibes with the shirt lasso. Yeah. So Pat, I would...
He could go for a snuggle. He could go for a snuggle, kind of covering his own.
Could score on the right too. That's probably that's pretty good because George could knock the yellow into the black, but it's a really hard shot. George can go down the alley. He kind of blocked in between the 2 options, so George can go down the alley and clear the black out, but it might clip the black disc that he just shot up front. Man, this is a really huge shot from George. Shoots it soft, and he clips him into points. Oh, on the center line.
Almost.
Yeah, that's the challenge with like shooting that as a finesse shot. I would have shot that really hard.
Yeah.
And now Pat kind of probably doing the same thing. Oh, goes to the snuggle that you
Makes
suggested.
The snuggle.
2 points. A lot of things could go right for George here. I mean, for Pat here after the shot. But George is going to have final say with the hammer.
No.
So
But see, what did I tell you about the surprise pepperoni?
I know. I don't want to jinx it. I want it to happen. Oh,
Oh,
my God, you
no.
called it. So George,
Okay.
with an 8 here, there on the board it is 8 yellow, 15 black. But Pat has an opportunity to either kitchen George or split that disc on the 8-8 line. I think he's going for the split. Let's see it. Oh, he bumps him, tries to bump on the 8-7 line, and we have 4 scoring discs in here, right? I don't want to call it. I'm sure that's 4.
I feel confident that we do.
All right,
we'll
cool.
We'll see if I'm wrong.
On the board, we have 23 black and 7 yellow. And, this is kind of what happens when you're not clearing. You know what I mean? Like, you try snuggling, and the frame can kind of spiral out of control. George needs a huge shot here. He's probably fine just evening out the score by clearing 2 blacks out. So I would probably blast
the top 2.
The top 2 right in between them.
Yeah.
But he hasn't been blasting anything, so we'll see what he goes for. Lining up from the 4 spot. Shoots it pretty good. And wow. What a incredible outcome. It is 15 yellow, 8 black, so he gains 7 points on that frame. Really, really nice shot from George. Sort of like a chaotic approach to scoring one's hammer, one could say.
But it's what you got to do when you let Pat surprise pepperoni you.
Yeah, exactly. So, really exciting last frame now. I mean, it is, that looks right. It's 66 to 54. Pat's trying to double check that his math's right.
Yeah.
That looks like good math to me.
Since I always play the head for my team on league nights, and then I'm always half responsible for it during singles matches, I just feel like everyone should do the disc math. Let's all do collaborative biscuit math together.
Oh, yeah.
And make sure that we're not. It would be my worst nightmare to cheat by bad biscuit math.
And it happens. It happens especially down in Florida when you're baking in the sun and you're playing best 2 out of 3 16 frame games. And you got an opponent that you're playing against who maybe isn't the friendliest person in the world. I love our St. Pete friends. I'm not talking about you. You probably know the people I'm talking about. But yeah, bad math can happen.
Yeah, nice deep 7.
Nice deep 7 from
Laying out
Pat.
some kitchen bait.
Yep, and George with a really good clear.
Yeah.
So yeah, what Pat's doing here, his only path to win is if he has 2 scoring discs or if he can put George in the -10. So what he's doing is he's doing kitchen bait, putting disc on, hoping that George can't clear it out or chooses not to clear it out, and then he has a kitchen opportunity. So George made the last clear, lining up from the 4 spot again. And he's taking his time, shoots it nice and hard, and he gets it really nice. 2 in a row. So let's see if Pat switches up the kitchen bait. Do you think he's going to? Oh.
I think he's going to go for the other side.
You see the other court was trying to help out, and they kicked the disc over right in the kitchen. Yeah, I think he's going to the other side, too. Smart play from Pat, trying to keep George on his toes. And this is actually quite interesting, too, because there's the scenario where George tries to block this up and misses the block instead of continuing to clear.
Yeah.
And with Pat down 12, if George misses the block, Pat can split that for the win. Yeah. So correct shot here, I say, is clear it. And he does go for the clear, but he sticks it.
Doesn't get it.
Ends up with an 8. And to win the match, Pat Murphy, Tangers only, 1 shot to win the match and move on. Oh, baby. Needs the kitchen and the score. Lining it up. Looks pretty good. Gets the 8. And just deep on the kitchen.
Just slightly too long.
Oh, does not get the kitchen. Oh, nice job. Congratulations, George. Really, really well played. Congratulations, Pat. Heck of a season with the 10-2 in group play. Just wasn't his game today.
Yeah.
That was a really fun one, though.
It was a really good
I love
one.
when matches come down to the last shot. That's like a dream scenario for me.
And for something where the point differential was so big earlier on, then for it to come down to the last shot is really extra fun, I think.
It was really nice of George to do that for all the viewers at home. Let Pat back in this game. All right, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for watching Brooklyn Shuffleboard. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and catch you on the next one. Peace out.